Hallie's hands were bare of weapons or equipment, and time was running out. The clock of doom was already ticking. Katafi's terrorists would be back for them very soon, and that would mean certain death for the two snake men and the total failure of the Outer Heaven mission. What was Hallie to do? His rigorous Snake Man training had taught Solid Snake ways in which he could create whatever he needed from his immediate environment. He looked around him. What was there in this bare cell that he could use? Hallie concentrated, visualizing possible escape scenarios. One piece of luck gave Hallie the slightest edge. Along with the 2 key cards, the terrorists had missed the little book of matches that Justin had found in the trunk. Now, if Solid Snake was careful with them, they would at least have some illumination in this dark cell. And maybe the matches would even be more useful than just shedding light. Because although the cell was sealed tightly, Hallie thought he could feel the merest whisper of cold air seeping in from outside. Somewhere there must be a crack in the cell wall. Lighting a match, he held it up as long as he could before it burned his fingers. Yes, there was a thin trickle of cold air coming in from somewhere outside the cell. The flame was flickering in only one direction. Hallie lit up another match and held this one somewhat lower down, next to the wall. The little match head of fire told him that air was flowing from that direction. With the third match burning, Solid Snake got down on his hands and knees and looked intently. He had to find the airflow before he used the book of matches up completely. Before the match burned out, Hallie's hands found the small gust of air, and his eyes detected the beginnings of a crack in the wall, very close to the floor. He got down on his stomach as close to the wall as he could and inspected, feeling the wall carefully with his fingers. Yes, there was a fault in the masonry. A tiny crack in the wall, just beginning to break through the other side. Now, if he could only locate the weakest point in the fault... Solid Snake's fingers felt around until they touched the softest part. He felt the masonry beginning to crumble a little under his touch. Satisfied, Justin Hallie sat back on his haunches. "Hold tight, Gray Fox," he said. "Keep it together, and don't go dying on me now. I think I may see a way to get us out of here." Reaching over to where he dropped his blindfold when he torn it off, Solid Snake picked it up and folded the greasy cloth into 3 thicknesses. He wrapped the wad tightly around the knuckles of his right hand and made a strong fist. He stood up, squared his shoulders. Then, taking a deep breath and letting it out again in a tiger's roar, Hallie ran toward the wall at top speed. At the last moment, he dropped down and aimed a karate punch with his wrapped fist straight at the center of the crack in the masonry, in the very heart of its weakest spot. Instantly, the bricks and mortar gave way, and a hole opened in the cell wall. Scratching with his bare hands, Hallie enlarged the hole. He had to work fast. The terrorists will be back any moment now. At last, the hole was large enough for a man to pass through. Gently, Justin Hallie lifted the weak Gray Fox in his arms as though the big man were a child and carried him to the hole, pushing him through to the other side of the cell wall. Then Solid Snake squeezed through the hole and stood up, brushing mortar and brick dust off his camos. Now they were free, but Gray Fox was too weak to stand, and Solid Snake was without a weapon. He would have to stash his squad leader in some relatively safe place and make an effort to recapture his weapons and other gear, or else find new ones. He'd already lost valuable time. Gray Fox said he had less than an hour to get to Metal Gear and disarm it. Because he'd been brought there blindfolded, and because his cell had been so well hidden, Hallie had no idea what part of outer heaven they were in now. Would either of his keycards work here? There was a small door behind one of the columns that held up the ceiling, and Hallie tried key card 1 on the lock. No go. The lock wouldn't budge. Key card 2. He heard a click. All right, this one got the door open. The room was empty. No prisoners, no equipment. It was probable that Gray Fox would be as safe here as anywhere else in the compound. I'll be back for you as soon as I can, Hallie told his squad leader. Try to stay alive, Gray Fox. We'll get through this thing. You're a good man, Solid Snake, Gray Fox barely whispered. If anyone can succeed in this mission, it's you. The squad leader reached inside a pocket. One last thing, he said. Take these goggles. They're infrared. There are laser traps on some of the floors. You can see them with these goggles. Solid Snake left Gray Fox lying on the floor of the room and closed the door behind him, making a mental note of the layout so that he could find his squad leader later. If there was a later. Without even knowing which level he was on or in what building, Justin Hallie resumed his search of outer heaven, still looking for the radio, for a weapon, and for clues to Metal Gear. The next room Solid Snake entered had nothing in it. It appeared to be just an empty space. But Justin Hallie had a strange feeling about this place. Something was in here, he was sure of it. He did a quick search, but came up with nothing. Even so, all his instincts told him that something of importance should be hidden here. He looked again, this time even more thoroughly, but once again he found nothing. Perhaps his Snake Man instincts were wrong this time. He was wasting precious minutes. By now the terrorists would have returned to get Solid Snake and Gray Fox. They would have found them missing, and they'd be searching every inch of outer heaven. Reluctantly, Hallie turned to leave, to look elsewhere. But there it was! Something really small caught Solid Snake's sharp, trained eye. High up the wall, close to the ceiling, a piece of plastic, no bigger than a credit card. A brief touch told them that it was key card 3. The young Marine captain retrieved it. He now had 3 out of the 8 necessary cards. Why were the keys just lying about? Hallie was sure that it was a sign of the maniac Katafi's arrogance, building a fortress and then leaving the keys in plain sight. With keycard 3 in his pocket, Hallie felt a sense of elation. He was on his way again. Locking the door behind him, he looked around to see where he should go next. One door on the far wall stood out. It was bigger than the others. Big enough to drive a vehicle through. Trucks and tanks, jeeps, and other rolling stock were parked all over outer heaven, both indoors and out. Could this room be some kind of armory or supply depot? If it was, it must certainly be guarded. Solid Snake would have to be even more cautious than usual. He crept up silently to the door and applied keycard 3 to the lock, and heard the click. In the next room, which was a supply depot, a huge man, whom Hallie recognized from his criminal files as the Shotgunner, was keeping watch over a large cache of weapons, including Solid Snake's own equipment. The terrorists had brought in the weapons to this central armory for storage after they captured Justin Hallie. If there was ever one big, ugly monster, it was the Shotgunner. He was armed to the teeth, ready to kill, and he loved his work. Creeping silent as a shadow, staying close to the wall to avoid detection, Solid Snake entered the armory. He saw the giant shape of the Shotgunner looming in the center of the room, watchful, waiting for an intruder so that he could let fly with a deadly rain of bullets. In the guard's large hands was the most powerful shotgun that Hallie had ever seen. One blast from that gun could tear a gaping hole in the wall of a steel building. All around him, Hallie saw piles of weapons, guns and explosives of all kinds. But getting them into his hands would be a noisy business. Before Solid Snake could even shoulder a weapon, the Shotgunner would have hurled him and blown him to the moon. Wait a minute! There, almost under the nose of the shotgunner, was a pile of gear on the floor. Just as Hallie recognized it. It was his own, the Beretta with its silencer, the Ingram Mac 2, his bandolier, the gas mask, all of it, even his rations. Now if he could only get to it. Using the oldest trick in the book, the ventriloquist skill of throwing his voice in another direction, Solid Snake made a small sound come from the opposite side of the room. For a split second, the shotgunner turned his head, only just long enough for Hallie to race past him and grab up his weapons cache. Solid Snake hoped that his hands would first fall on the pistol, because the pistol had a silencer. But he didn't have time to pick or choose. And as luck would have it, the first weapon into his hand was the Mac 2. The shotgunner heard him and growled in his throat, a deep animal sound, an enraged threat. He lifted his mighty shotgun and sighted the barrel down at Hallie. There wasn't a second to spare. Solid Snake didn't even have time to reach for the trigger of his gun. Instead, he whirled and swung the Mac 2 like a baseball bat, letting the shotgunner have it on the side of the head. He heard the angry growl become a grunt, saw the shotgunner topple over from the force of the blow, and the mighty gun fall from his big hands. Solid Snake knew that the noise of the struggle would have the terrorist guards down on him before he could blink an eye. He had to get out of there, and fast. But as he was running the back door, loaded down with his gear, he noticed some equipment among the supplies that might prove very useful. A suit of body armor and a bomb blast suit. Grabbing them, Hallie ran for his life, out through the back door. He wasn't aware of it yet, but Hallie was about to come face to face with a new hazard. The dreaded heat panels.